Hello and welcome to this presentation on teaching styles and strategies presented by the Gwenna Moss Center at the University of Saskatchewan. This presentation we're going to first look at teaching styles, then we'll look at some class-wide or course-long strategies, and then we'll look at some day-to-day teaching strategies. So first off, we'll look at some different ways that teaching styles are broken down. So one way that they're broken down is by the Teaching Perspectives Inventory. They break teaching down into 5 perspectives or styles. So transmission, apprenticeship, developmental, nurturing, and social reform. So this suggests that teachers primarily are one or a number of these, but not all of these when they look at teaching. There's an interesting inventory that you can complete on this website to see where you fit, and then it also has another interesting portion where it looks at your beliefs about teaching and your actions about teaching, and you can see, do those match up, or do you believe things about teaching that don't match up with what you're actually doing? Another way of looking at teaching styles looks at these 4. So formal authority, demonstrator model, facilitator, and delegator. Quickly defining these, formal authority essentially is when the instructor is the one with all the knowledge and they're passing it down to the students. Demonstrator model is similar, but involves the instructor demonstrating a lot more as opposed to just telling the knowledge. So they're setting up demonstrations and showing the students a lot of things. Facilitator goes a step further, and in that case, the instructor isn't demonstrating things to the students. Instead, the instructor is there basically setting up activities, putting students in experiences so that they can experience the concepts themselves and learn the concepts. Delegator goes even a step further, where the instructor does very little to facilitate the learning, instead just basically puts the students in the situations and kind of helps direct the students to design and create their own learning experiences. An even simpler breakdown of teaching styles are essentially teacher-centered and student-centered. So teacher-centered often involves a low level of student choice. The students are often passive. The power is primarily with the teacher, and it's often focused on the transmission of content, so content going from point A to point B. So teacher-centered learning, it can be appropriate when providing students with content that they can't get anywhere else. In teacher-centered classrooms, it's really important to establish clear objectives, to be organized, to break up your content, and to summarize often. You could also utilize a student response system, something such as clickers, to bring in some student interaction and student assessment. Student-centered teaching, on the other hand, often has a high level of student choice. Students are very active, the power is primarily with the student, and it's focused primarily on conceptual change in learners. It often involves group work, and students are discovering or creating knowledge, constructing knowledge, rather than listening or viewing. So they're involved in activities which allow them to construct the concepts for themselves. So it's important as a teacher to determine the strategies that you are comfortable using. It's very difficult to jump between styles for you and for your students. So for example, if you do a lot of lessons from the formal authority model where you're telling students things, and then you want to jump to being a delegator where you're just asking students to direct their own learning, that's a hard jump for students to make, and it's also a hard jump for you as an instructor to make, and especially if that doesn't match your personality. So it's really important to use the strategies and have the style that you're comfortable using, and make sure it matches your personality. Now looking at teaching strategies, looking at some class-wide strategies. These are strategies that you could use for an entire term, or these could be put in for smaller pieces like a few days at a time, but generally these are larger ones. Often courses involve lectures most days. Experiential learning is when an instructor thoughtfully organizes a specific interactive learning experience for students. So it could be things like a field-based experience. Problem-based learning, it typically involves 4 steps. So a problem is posed by the instructor. This problem is often hypothetical, but it could be a real problem. Students then, they decide what they need to learn in order to address the problem. So the big thing there is the students decide what they need to learn. And then students go to textbooks, they go to online resources, they go to experts in the field. They go around and find this knowledge that they need in order to solve the problem. And then they apply what they've learned to that particular problem. So the great thing with problem-based learning is that all of the learning is very relevant. Inquiry-based learning is similar to problem-based learning, but in this case, it's often the students that are coming up with the problem that they want to explore or inquire into, rather than the problem being posed by the instructor. Cooperative learning is more than just group learning. Cooperative learning is about a classroom community involving students in a kind of interdependence, whereby all are working towards a common goal. So interdependence is really important in cooperative learning, which makes it more than just group work. So not everyone is doing the same thing in the group. Each student has a role, and their role is very important. And then flipped teaching is a strategy that can be used across a whole course or also from day to day, and it involves the process of moving lecture content from face-to-face class time and assigning it before class as homework. Often it involves students watching lecture videos, doing readings, things like that prior to class to get down what you would normally have in a lecture involving facts, definitions, basic concepts, things like that. And then in class, students are allowed to do much more interactive learning, and they can learn with each other, learn with the instructor. So those are some class-wide strategies that can be used across an entire term or could be used day to day. Some other more specific day-to-day strategies are things like case studies. So a case is a means of participatory teaching and learning by group discussion of actual events. Role plays and simulations are developed and directed by the instructor to meet specific learning objectives, and they're often approximations of the real thing carried out in the safety of the structured learning environment. So as opposed to students working on a practicum, role plays and simulations allow students to be put into those real world situations, but within the safety of the classroom in case they make mistakes. It's an opportunity to learn while being in a very authentic situation. Think, Pair, Share involves students first thinking on their own and then discussing what they're thinking in a pair, and then the pair shares the key points of their discussion with the class. So it's just a way to get students interacting. Often works really well in a lecture style course. Pyramids are similar to Think, Pair, Shares, but instead of going from one student to two students and then to the full class, it keeps building. So one student thinks on their own, then share it with another student, so then there's two students, then two groups come together, so you have 4 students, then another 2 groups can come together, you have 8 students, and the groups become larger. Different sized classes will make this more or less feasible to do, but it's a really great way to get students interacting with a lot of different students in the classroom. Jigsaws often involve students working in groups. Each member in that group is responsible for a certain topic or a certain portion of a concept, and that student becomes an expert at that portion and then is able to share that portion with the rest of the group. Discussions are very common in teaching, obviously, and they're best when time is spent to ensure that all voices are heard, and also when there are clear objectives. It really helps to arrange the room, if possible, in some sort of circle or some way that students are actually able to look at one another while they're discussing, as opposed to seeing the back of each other's heads. A debate allows students to explore both sides of an issue in an organized format. Another strategy is modeling expert problem solving. That involves the instructor modeling the process that he or she would follow to solve a problem within their discipline. This can really assist students in understanding the thinking and the processes of the discipline. And of course there are many more day-to-day teaching strategies. These are some common ones. When it comes to teaching strategies, it's important to mix it up. Try some different strategies, but when you're trying things, realize that it's not always going to go well. So be authentic with your students. Explain why you're trying these different things. And the reason for trying these different things, right, is for student learning. You want students to be able to learn the content as best as possible. When it comes to coming up with strategies, talk to other colleagues. Talk to colleagues in your discipline. Talk to colleagues in other disciplines. Share ideas with one another. And also, if possible, visit colleagues' classes. The big thing with teaching strategies is we want to get students involved. This Chinese proverb, I think, says it great. So as a summary, when it comes to teaching strategies, focus on your learning objectives. So ask yourself, what should students be able to do? And does your teaching strategy lead to this ability? So thank you for watching. I hope this provided you with a quick overview of teaching styles and teaching strategies, and I wish you the best of luck and the greatest enjoyment in your teaching.